Not all red meats raise your risk for heart disease equally. One type of red meat raises your risk for cardiovascular disease by 11%, but another type increases it by more than double that. Yes, red meat consumption is linked to cardiovascular disease and coronary heart disease and diabetes, but the magnitude of the risks for those diseases might lie in whether you're eating more processed or unprocessed red meat. One massive meta-analysis that looked at 43 different papers with over 4 million research participants found that eating unprocessed red meats led to an 11% increase of risk of developing cardiovascular disease when eating 100 grams per day of red meat. But the same study found that if you're eating unprocessed red meat at just 50 grams a day, so half as much, that risk jumps from 11 to 26%. So you're getting more than twice as much cardiovascular disease risk for half as much consumption of the red meat, which obviously isn't a good thing. And there have been additional studies in the literature that have backed this up. Another study found a 14% increase in cardiovascular disease risk when eating unprocessed red meat and a 28% when eating processed red meat. And another study, handful of studies actually have shown links between both processed and unprocessed red meats in coronary heart disease and diabetes, with the risks being worse for those who eat more processed red meats. There was actually a nice study out of Oxford University where the authors actually put this in a nice framework to kind of help contextualize this. They said that 10 out of every 100 people in the UK will eventually die from coronary heart disease, but if all 100 of those people decreased their red meat consumption by 75% or more, that number would drop from 10 out of 100 to 9 out of 100. And so the risks are there and they are real, but the magnitude might not be quite as bad as you thought. And so, what do you do with this information? How do you move forward? I think the easiest thing to do is definitely limit the amount of processed red meats that you're eating. And so you want to limit things like bacon and deli meats, sausages, hot dogs. Those are going to be your processed red meats that are going to give you the biggest risks. And additionally, if you want to eat red meat, a little bit probably isn't going to kill you. Everything is good in moderation. But if you can maybe cut back a little bit of that consumption and keep it to grass-fed beef and pork and lamb, then you'll probably be just fine. But definitely try to limit the consumption of those processed red meats because that seems where the biggest risks lie. More resources are in the caption.